Now, at the same time, keyword there being dangerous, they are just that at certain times as well, because the fact of they can get a little bit messy at times. And what I mean by that is a case of, with the behavior project parameters, we attach them to an entire category or categories. And thinking of electrical equipment or mechanical equipment, those are very, very broad categories. Okay, so if I create a parameter as a project parameter, it needs to be more general focused. Okay, I can't get specific about a parameter that only applies to pumps or only applies to air handlers. A perfect example, if as a project parameter I create one called supply airflow and I attach it to mechanical equipment, yes, that's going to work great for the AV boxes, my air handlers, other types of HVA equipment, but also what would happen is it would show up on pumps and boilers and water heaters and lots of other equipment. So it can get messy really, really quickly because of the fact that you don't have the ability to select individual families or family types that they go to. But again, it's kind of one of those things where a lot of clients, that was kind of their first venture into parameter creation. They saw they could get their schedules created that way. Wasn't the most efficient, but hey, at least they were being able to leverage some of the data that's in there. Now, at the same time, hey, there's cases where project parameter is the only route that we can go. So if it's a system family, spaces, or ducts, pipes, conduits, cable trays, architectural walls, things that are system-based families, the only way that we can attach custom parameters is going to be the project parameter route. So in that case, hey, we've got to utilize them to be assigned. Another downside to it, potentially, is the fact that we can't give it a predefined value. Okay, so I can't tell, hey, this particular neck size diffuser and type of diffuser that it's always an S1, or this particular 2x4 120 fixture is always an F1. This one's an F2. You don't get that flexibility with a project parameter. It's more of a blanket statement, kind of on an as-need basis. You're populating it as you're going through there. Now, moving into shared parameters. A couple highlights about that. Those of you that are on the line or in this presentation that have created shared parameters can attest to that very first item there, that, yeah, they do take more time to create. Even more time to kind of plan them out, right? Because you can't have duplicate names for them. So if I'm creating one called horsepower, well, do I create that under some mechanical heading or some electrical heading? So it takes some planning related to shared parameters. And with that being said, that's why people didn't initially jump to shared parameters. Okay, they were kind of stuck back at the project parameter level. That way they can get them created quickly and start doing the scheduling and the other components as well. So with the shared parameters, by the time we're going in and we're setting up these standard files that we can work with, it allows us to provide enterprise level parameters that can be reused over and over with our content. Okay, so it opens up standardization from that parameter or property standpoint. A perfect example, if I've got multiple people creating families within the organization and someone is creating on their own a parameter for voltage, okay, one user may create that parameter and they type it out, voltage, they spell it all the way out. The next user, they're building another electrical family and they just put volts as the parameter name. You got a third person that just does a capital V. Okay, so that's 3 different variations of the exact same intent of that parameter. Well, if we're utilizing shared parameters, we can have a standardized list that we're constantly pulling from, plus that way they're going to sync up with our schedules as well. Also, at the same time, they're extremely flexible. Okay, we're not doing that global assignment like a project parameter would. We've got the capability to go individually into families, specific types of a family, and attach that shared parameter. So again, we don't run the issue like we saw with mechanical equipment. I could go directly into pumps and attach horsepower and not have it get assigned to a VAV box. So it makes it much more flexible at that parameter assignment level. And there's some utilities from Autodesk where it helps you push out mass shared parameters and also to multiple families if you want as well. Another advantage, defaults. Okay, being able to have some predefined values within that family. So if I want to spend the time inside of my family library and start giving some default values, so that way when they come across into my project, it's pre-populating those schedules as much as possible. Obviously, we can't automate all of that data extraction, but the ability to have a lot of that predefined information in there, shared parameters are going to give us that type of functionality. And of course, to really confuse matters, yes, we do project parameters and we attach shared parameters as project parameters in a lot of cases as well. So that really throws people for a loop when you're first learning all about parameters. So kind of next up here, as far as looking at actual topics and seeing them on the screen as well inside of Revit, first up is going to be our Imagine It Revit utilities. And again, only going to talk about the ones that really focus on parameter-related assistance, so to say. Not necessarily creation, but more about population. So with the Imagine It Revit utilities, we've got a bundle of these tools that are available to our Imagine It subscription clients for free. Those are accessible through their client portal. If you are unfamiliar with where they are at, please feel free to contact your account manager. They can point you in the right direction and help get those installed. If you're not an Imagine It subscription client, these utilities are available to be purchased as well. So a lot of them are going to be kind of common related tools. Some of them are architectural focused, and some are MEP specific as well. First one's going to be this parameter copy tool. And yes, it is universal across all platforms of Revit. So what this allows me to do is pull a value from one parameter and push it into another parameter. Okay? And I like to say this is kind of a cheater way or a workaround at times to get schedules populated with parameters that aren't available by default. Okay, so if I go to schedule lighting fixtures, right out of the box with the software, load in lights, I build my schedule. So I choose mark, I choose description, manufacturer, model, I grab a lamp, then I look for voltage. Well, voltage isn't in there for some reason. So that's not a parameter that's immediately accessible to you to pull into a schedule. And almost everyone I interact with, they say, well, we show voltage on our light fixture schedules. Majority of people do. Now, the proper way, yes, go into your library, start building some shared parameters, associating them, and making sure they come across in a project. However, if you're not at that advanced level yet, or you don't have the time just yet, and you want to be able to create a schedule and pull certain parameter values that aren't generally available, this will give you the ability to do so. Now, if you've ever used the space update tool, either from our utilities or from the Autodesk subscription sites, that's what would take the architectural room name and number and push it into the space name and number. Very, very similar functionality right here. Okay, that one's jumped between category types. This keeps it within the same category of an object. Then we've got our concatenator. Always a mouthful to say, but this gives us the ability to take multiple parameters and combine them into one. Okay, so if I've got some project parameter already set up that's kind of the placeholder for this, I can pull multiple parameters together. I can put delimiters in there if I want to, and it's going to go ahead and output into that defined custom parameter. And again, this is always a huge wish list item, especially if people were coming from the AutoCAD MEP world or AutoCAD architecture, because there we had property sets. Okay, property sets, that was a standard functionality to combine parameters together. I remember 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago wondering why we didn't have this in Revit. So with this unique utility from Imagine It, you can combine them together and get that actual result. Now, one that's not directly related to parameter creation or itself, we do have one of our newer tools is the ability to export to Excel and also import back in. So what you can do is define standard export templates. You can make it match your schedule if you want to, and export that out to Excel. You can pass that on to a non-Revit user or someone you don't want in your Revit model. They can populate certain parameters. You can import that back in, and it's actually going to update your model. Okay, now Autodesk does have a database linking tool available through subscription, but it's more of an entire database dump and then bringing it back in. whereas with our Imagine utility, you can custom define different export templates. That way you get to pick and choose what goes out and therefore comes back in. So again, another way to access data and also populate parameters as well. So to see a couple of these in action, we'll first take a look at our parameter copy tool. So I'll go ahead and share over Revit MEP 2014. And you're going to be seeing just a simple building. It's got some lights laid out inside of it, first and second floor, and also some diffusers and equipment, etc. So once those are installed, we will have a dedicated Imagine It ribbon tab with the related utilities. You can see we've got the parameter copy that we're going to be focusing on initially here, and then the concatenator is going to be available to us for multiple parameter combining also. Now, with the parameter copy, let's say we open up a lighting fixture schedule, kind of the scenario I was describing a moment ago. So as I go through here and take a look at the fields that I'm going to schedule. Okay, I've already got some standard ones pulled across. As I mentioned, voltage is not a standard field or parameter that we can grab. Okay, right out of the box, it's not there. You've got to do some behind-the-scenes work to get it going. So once I get in here and I look for it, I don't see it anywhere in there. Yes, voltage loss is in there, but not applicable for this type of schedule here. So what I'm going to do is create myself a project parameter. That way, I can pull information from the object and populate that project parameter. And that can be the one that I end up scheduling. Because if we go to the actual project and look at one of these lights, we know voltage is on that object. Okay, when an electrical connector is placed in a family, we've got this ballast voltage parameter that appears. Right there it is. But again, it's just one of those tricky parameters you can't get to right out of the box with the software. So we're going to create basically a portal for this to come across for us. And again, this is just a workaround if you don't have your library, all the way completed with standard parameters. So we'll go ahead and create a project parameter. No different than any other time going through and getting one of these set up. We'll go ahead and add it in here. I'm just giving a generic name. Okay, just something we can recognize really easily here. Then we've got discipline. So this is going to dictate the type of parameters that are available to me. Okay, essentially the units related to the parameter type. So if I go down and I were to choose electrical, okay, that's going to change those from things like area, length, text, number, and so on, and give me electrical related parameter types. Now, if you're unsure with what these different types of parameters equate to, you can go to your project units, take a look at those, and it'll actually define. You'll see that electrical potential has a V for voltage next to it. Current has an A for amps, and so on. But if you're kind of getting familiar with how they've named this information, you can get that breakdown up there. So we're going for voltage, so it's electrical potential. Okay, and as far as grouping it under, again, no bearing on functionality. You can put this wherever you want, just so we can easily see it. I'm going to throw it to the under section there. And it's going to be a type parameter because we're going for that particular family type. There are 120s, 277s, and so on. And I'll make that selection for the category that it belongs to. So as I make my choice here, now all of my light fixtures are going to have this new parameter placed in them. So if I go to the light fixture, still ballast voltage, but all the way at the bottom here, we've got our other right there. And we can move that one to a more relevant location later on, but again, just to see it easily here. Notice that it's blank right now. So as we accept out of here, we're then going to run that parameter copy tool from the Imagine It utilities. This is going to give you a list of all of the categories that you can pull from, not just MEP related, but just Revit related. Okay, so I would filter down to the category that I need. In this case, it's going to be lighting fixtures. And it's going to show me the available parameters that I can copy from. Okay, so standard list here. As I start going through, we know we've got ballast voltage. It even gives me the sample value that's currently in place right now. So I want to copy from the ballast voltage, because remember, that one was the parameter we couldn't gain access to just like type mark. You get type mark in the family. So then I'll go through and I'll look for my custom project parameter that I created. Right there it is, voltage, imagine it. So once we go ahead and next through here, I'm going to copy them all across as long as they're using that ballast voltage parameter. Now if I take a look at one of my lights, you can see there's the ballast voltage still there. So let's go look at our custom parameter, voltage, imagine it. It got that same value. So essentially just look at the source, copy and pasted it into that defined location. So where does this help me beyond this point here? Back in that schedule. Again, it's kind of that workaround, in which we can get this fixture schedule created without having to dig too much into a family. So if I come back into my schedule and do standard schedule editing tools, so go into my fields. Again, ballast voltage is not in there, so I'll go to our voltage, imagine it, add that to the schedule, and then again just decide where I want to place it in here. And then we can see it populated those fixture types in there. Now, you may have to run that more than once if they're not all using the parameter called ballast voltage. Some just use called voltage. So you may have to run that a couple times to get them all to come across. Okay. Now, this is essentially just a direct value input. If I change this information, obviously it's not going to change the connector. It's not going to affect the circuiting. This is just that final result of what that translation would do for us. It's also static at that point in time. So if you go through and you switch out lights, from 120s to 277s, you would need to rerun that tool. That way it will overwrite this existing data or fill out the new data that's potentially blank as well. So again, that's taking a look at a parameter, porting it across there, making it part of the schedule. That way I can start to use this thing and have a more realistic luminaire schedule. Now, looking at any of these other types of schedule, diffuser schedule, looking at if there's anything I can copy across from there, I could pull it inside. Looking at any of the space type schedules. If I want to copy values from one to another, I've got that capability here as well. Now, here's another instance to where I could use that concatenator tool. Okay, the one that allows me to combine multiple parameters into one. Okay, if in your standard schedules you're used to seeing name and number as one column, okay, one actual cell entry, we can make our own and actually merge those two together. So right now we've got the two separate parameters for them. And we're going to go ahead and create, again, a project parameter for us. That way it'll take our name and number. Okay, so I'm just going to do name and number. And this is going to be text. Or if I wanted to just dump it into a comments field or something like that, you can always choose to do that also. So it just depends upon the direction you want to go with it. This one being name and number, filling it out wherever I want, and telling it that it applies to spaces. Okay, so we're assigned to the category of spaces because that's what I want to merge the information across to. And no default value for it. So now all spaces have that information or have that parameter attached to them. So now is run the actual utility and combine those parameters together. Or again, we can go the route of pushing them into one of the standard parameters that are on spaces. So we'll go ahead and get the tool started. Same thing, we need to tell it what it is that we're trying to work with. So what category of an object. Again, it's going to list everything down through here. And I've got my target parameter. So where do I want to dump this newly formed result? Okay, where do I want to push that into? Well, we can see we've got our custom name and number. So what is this parameter going to equal? I'll take a look at my available parameters that I've got down here. And depending upon the order, I guess I should call it name and number, number and name. So I'll add name as a parameter. And again, I can put a delimiter there. a dash, an X, or just a space. Get my number and choose OK, and it's going to go ahead and update however many of those object types that are in there. So now, similar to what we did on the lighting fixture side, we added that field to the schedule. Okay, so if I go to my my fields here, we'll go down, we'll find our custom parameter, so name and number. And we're going to sort it by that as well. And we can see it took a combination of both and then put them into one. So if I go back, obviously I wouldn't need name and number anymore. Now I'm just left with this. Or again, I could have flip-flopped and did the number first. That way I could sort it numerically and would have a better sorting order going down through there. But again, it's taking those two parameter values, combining them in, providing this result right here. Again, this is one of those tools that, if there was a change, so if there was a change to the name or the number, you would need to rerun this tool periodically. That way it will go ahead and update. Just like the space update tool. Architects change the room name and number in the Revit architecture model. We need to run that utility. That way it grabs the up-to-date names and numbers as well. So again, that's going to be the concatenator. And kind of that honorable mention, on the Excel side, project data export, we can go in and actually configure what the export's going to look like, have it set up to match a schedule if I want to. And then we're actually able to export that information out to Excel, giving it a name. So again, I can put this on, a network location, project directory. And it's going to give me that formatted export, okay, as opposed to everything going out. So again, me being able to come in without any information that I want. People could be putting in model numbers, descriptions, whatever it takes as that information is manipulated. Obviously, there would be some rules and regulations you'd want to implement about, hey, don't change, this value, or don't change, some of the others. You want those kind of hands off, and you can lock them if you wanted to. But I can allow someone to fill the information out required. Once I've saved it, then I can go ahead and actually import it back into Revit. Just through that Excel file and tell it, hey, I want to use this template to come back. It's going to let us know that, hey, you've exported out some things that you're not supposed to be changing. So it's just giving you that type of information. But hey, it knows that we've got read-only columns, but then we've got editable columns as well. So someone could have went through and filled out all the min-max flows and so on, been able to leverage that as well. So I've got a success of all of them. I close that out, looking at the diffuser schedule. Sure, it populated tightest there. These are not itemized, but same concept of if I went to here and looked at any of them, they're going to have that information inside of them. So that's giving you a formatted data export and allowing it to be imported back in and update your project there as well. And it's in some cases just to get you into a more user-friendly, editing interface. If I'm going through and filling out, a sheet index or sheet names, sheet numbers, I can export that information out as well. That's an exportable category for me. So I can do all my typing inside of there as opposed to potentially working through one of these schedules, or doing a lot of right-clicking, renaming, and things like that. So that's a quick look at a couple of the parameter-related and kind of design schedule type of functionality, through the Imagine It Revit utilities. Kind of sticking along the lines of spaces, we've got the capability to attach additional parameters to spaces. I know there's quite a few already. We've got all the engineering data that's in there. I've got all my energy analysis section, space types, occupancy data, etc. But maybe I need some additional information, okay? And maybe I want to use that information to make comparisons, Okay, if I'm wanting to use this more from a design standpoint as opposed to a sheet that or a schedule I'm going to put onto a sheet. Okay, so I can create some of these internal design schedules, kind of do a checks and balances of certain things, and make my changes within the project and have it update the design at the same time. So leveraging the schedules, yeah, we can embed our formulas into there. We've got conditional formatting, which we'll see. It'll do some flagging on the screen for us, and it'll make it a little bit more easier to see where we've got a potential issue that needs reviewed. So to kind of see some of these in action related to the spaces themselves, we'll first take a look at from a mechanical side. Okay. So opening up a mechanical floor plan. Yes, I've already got laid out inside of here. We've got standard parameters. I haven't attached anything unique other than you can see there's our name and number, but don't have anything additional inside of here at this point in time. Okay, it's just all standard data. So looking at this in a schedule format, pulling some of that airflow data. You see we've got name and number, and I've got my calculated value that came from either the internal load calculations or if I've exported this to Trace or something else and brought it back in. And then we've got the actual value, which of course is going to be from the diffusers that are within that space, just totaling those up for us. So this may be a schedule that you've seen somewhat in action before, but then we're going to kind of build upon it on the electrical side as we move on. So I've got these two values here. So, just a quick check. I've got to look down through here and see, okay, I've got calculated 790. I have 2,000 in there. Something's going on there. Of course, a lot of zeros. That just means I don't have diffusers. Calculate supply airflow 143, and I've got 1,000 in there. So nothing stands out at me, though. Okay, I've got to kind of look at each of these columns inside of here. Well, what I can do is add a custom column that's a calculated value. And it's just going to use a simple formula inside of there. Okay, so as I come in, generically call it delta. What's my discipline going to be? Well, we need to make units happy when we're doing these formulas. We don't want to get any inconsistent units, errors yelling at us. So I'm going to go to HVAC, and we're dealing with airflow. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to get airflow for that type of parameter. That way it leverages CFM across the board. Then for my formula itself, I can type that parameter value in there, or I can just use my little helper here, click out, and pick from the list. So this is looking at parameters that are in the actual schedule already. Now, you can add these fields if you don't want those to end up showing, kind of on your final version of it. You can hide some of these background columns if you want to. So I'm just going to do an actual supply airflow minus some simple math here, my calculated value. And we'll step through this. So first I'm going to go ahead and accept it. And we'll see that it's given me results here. Okay, so it's telling me in the case I've got 790 calculated, actual 2,000. So basically I'm positive 1210. Okay, here I'm minus 376, minus 34, etc. So again, I still would have to be kind of looking at this to look for the minus symbols that are in there. If I want something to jump out at me and help with identifying potential issues, we're going to go in and assign some conditional formatting. Okay, so back in the standard schedule editing tools, take a look at that delta field. If this is the cell that I want to shade in or color or jump out at me, I'm going to choose that particular field, go into conditional formatting, and a conditional format essentially is just going to test the result. Okay, it's going to look at that certain parameter. It's going to establish one of these operators, greater than, less than, equal to, etc. So if I say it's less than 0 CFM, what that's going to do is look for anything that's negative. Okay, I could put a threshold here. I could say minus 10 or minus 15 if I didn't want to be alerted until I kind of hit that range. And just choose a color for it. And as I accept all the way out of here, I can get back to my original editing. And in newer versions of Revit, we can also include these conditional formats on sheets as well. So if I do drag this onto a sheet, it would take that red shading, if there was any, across. So once I accept that, again, it tests that rule. Is it true or is it false? Okay, so as it finds that negative value, it's going to go ahead and flag it in red for me to kind of give me that design alert. Say, hey, I need to go back in here. These are obviously pretty straightforward. I just haven't done anything in those spaces. Okay, I haven't put in any of the diffusers in them, to get an actual airflow or anything like that. Or the case of the restroom, I'm not going to put a supply diffuser in there. I've just got my exhaust in there. Okay, so another case, I could filter this out from the list if I really wanted to. But again, just looking at data that's there, comparing it, and getting a little bit of a graphical alert to us, if there's a potential issue with it inside of there. Now, on the electrical side of things, a little bit of a different scenario that we have to get set up beforehand. So we've got our existing foot candle count from the individual spaces. Okay, so it's automatically pulling that data right there. We don't have the dual parameters of calculated versus the actual like we had on the mechanical side. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to create a custom project parameter that's going to allow us to put in that lighting level we're supposed to have. So hey, my office is supposed to have 30 or 35. That'll give me a field to place it into, and then we'll kind of continue down the same path as the mechanical to where it can compare the lighting levels of the spaces. So we'll start out going back to our project parameters and getting one of these custom parameters added. I'll just go ahead and choose add, and I'm going to call it my design illumination target. Okay, so it's just my target value. And again, we've got to look at the units. It's going to be electrical, type of parameter. We're going with luminance. That's going to give me foot candles. Again, if you need help with that, go to the project units and see what you need to choose. Spaces, got to deal with instance here. So I'm going to go down and choose my spaces category. Okay, so we're going to apply the spaces just like we did name and number. Once that's accepted, again, it's looking for a blanket value. We're leaving that alone right now and accept this out of here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that field to this schedule. So we've got our design target. So all blank right now. Okay, no values currently being input. So what I can actually do is go through here, fill out what these are supposed to do. Another option, you could create a key schedule, if you're familiar with those, and have space types with standard lighting levels in them that you could apply. It's another advanced type of area we could go down. But let's say I'm going to manually plug these in here. Okay, so for the conference room, we're looking for 50. Here for our offices, we're doing 35. And yeah, I could do these multiple out in the view if I wanted to. But just to start going through and starting to fill some of these out as far as what I need. Again, we're back to how we originally started off with that mechanical schedule. Yes, I could look at each of these and kind of verify or validate that we're hitting things where we need to, but I need something to jump out at me. So we've added this custom parameter. We're going to go back into our fields, and we're going to add a calculated value just like we did a moment ago. So again, same concept. I'll go ahead and add that delta parameter. Again, we need to keep those units consistent. So as I go through and make my luminance value, and we're going to go ahead and set up our formula as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do my average illumination minus my target. And we're going to see if we're hitting that or not. Going back over to our conditional formatting. Same thing there. Establishes that rule as well. So if I'm less than 0, or again, setting up that threshold value, if you only want to be alerted when you're greater than 5 or something like that, you could as well. So as I accept all of these, then looking down through here, I can see, hey, I'm not getting a flag there, so we know we're at least have what we, at least exceeding that target is being displayed. Versus these two here, -2, -1, I'm going to live with that. Okay. Or again, that's where we could go in and we could set up that threshold to where we wouldn't be flagged unless it was -5 or greater, depending upon kind of the criteria you're after. You can only set one of these formats per column. So if you need to do an overage type of behavior, So obviously we're seeing if we're missing this, but also at the same time, if if this was greater by 100 foot candles, it wouldn't alert us. You could have a second column, beyond this delta one that would flag you if you were greater than a certain value. Okay, but you can't do both in the same one. So again, that's using some, a custom parameter, a little bit of work inside the schedule, some unique formulas, getting those attached within the project. Again, I'm not going to put these schedules on a sheet anywhere. I'm going to keep these internal. I can work with them here. I could export this out if I wanted to Excel and maybe populate these target values, whatever means and methods I want to use there. Now, kind of moving on a little bit, out of spaces, but sticking in line with the electrical side of things, we can also create some custom parameters or custom schedules related to circuiting. Okay, electrical circuits are a category themselves. Okay, so just like lighting fixtures, just like electrical devices or electrical fixtures, and we've got that capability to work on that particular category as well. So currently with Revit MEP, once we hit that 80%, we get the warning that pops up and tells us, hey, you're exceeding 80%, and you can go on. But at no point in time do you know where you're at related to that 80%. I don't know if I'm at 70, 75. I don't know if I'm at 125. Okay, if someone has already worked on that circuit and accepted it, not until I go to edit that circuit am I going to get that notification. Now, that 80% is a default value within Revit. I can't touch it. Okay, so I can't go in there and say, well, hey, in my area they want to know it's 70%, or they want to know it's 75. We don't have that flexibility. So we can kind of go that same approach to the space schedules with the circuit schedules. Okay, we can look at certain values, we can compare them, and we can also do some basic formulas with them as well to give us some of that design level behavior. So again, going back over to take a look at kind of the lighting layouts and things like that to work from. If we went through and assigned, everything to the same circuit, so let's go ahead and filter out everything but our lights. Go ahead and give them power, and we'll feed them to a panel as well. Now at this point, I'm not overloading the circuit, and I'm good. I'm looking at the circuit properties. See, we're at 20 amp, which is default. Again, I can't touch that either. Going down through here. Let's see a 15 amp flag that is overrated. Nope, we're still safe for the 15 amp. So back at 20, not overloaded. Nope, there we go. Once we click back in with that 15 amp, we were overloading. So there's one notification. So if someone was in the panel schedule making changes to that default 20 amp and made it 15, this is the alert that they would get. Now, if they didn't hit it within the panel schedule and saw it out here in the plan, it's going to look something like this. As I go through, I can grab all of my lights here. Actually, I need to edit that circuit to add to it. And then we'll force that overload just to show that warning in case you haven't seen it before. So we're going to edit that circuit 1 and just attach the rest of these lights to it. So here's a standard notification that you probably see telling me, hey, I'm exceeding that 80% of the defined rating. Okay, so as that warning pops up, I can keep going. I can say, oh, that's fine. I don't care. And I can add additionals if I really wanted to. Okay, but I'm going to finish. And in my schedules, you can see I've got, along with the space schedules, I have this circuit overload schedule. Okay, and I use the asterisks there just to kind of flag that it's one of those internal design type schedules. I'm not going to drop it on the sheet anywhere. So as I come out here, I can see I've got one circuit hooked up to that panel. There's a VAV box, I think, floating around here somewhere that's on an unnamed circuit, so that's what it is right there. So right now we're at on LP1, circuit 1. I can see the amp, I can see the rating. I know I'm overloaded, okay, but nothing's showing me that right here. Just like if I go back to my floor plan, if I wanted to add, these remaining lights, obviously this isn't how I'd be circuiting everything, but it's be a little bit different. we would see circuit 2 being populated on that circuit overload schedule. But again, we have no idea where we're at in that whole percentage, that 80%, et cetera. So I'm going to do is add another field inside of here. And this one's really just leveraging the parameters that are already there, but it's letting us apply one of these calculated values, almost like a transparent type parameter here. It's going to give us a comparison of this information. So I'm going to say this is a percent of my trip rating. Now this is going to be electrical as well, and for the type of parameter we're going with a demand factor. That way we can get a solid percentage result here. Now this formula, again, another straightforward one. So I come in, true current divided by my rating. Go ahead and accept it. And we can see where we fall with that rating. Now, another thing I like to do here, since we're kind of wanting to emphasize this percent of rating here, we can apply a conditional format to it that just says, hey, if it's greater than 0, flag it red. Again, because I'm just saying, hey, this is the cell I want you to focus on. This is the intent of the schedule, to come in and validate this information right here. So as I look at it and see, those 2 recessed pictures in the can that I threw together, they're at 15% versus my LP1 to 166. Or, again, I could go in there and we're saying that, hey, I want to be notified at 70%, not 80%. So maybe I'll set that at 70. As I go through there, then only that one would go into it. And again, if I want to change the rating here, I'm seeing this live, which in a panel schedule I don't see. Yes, I can change the rating of that circuit, but I'm not seeing that initial effect on what's connected to it. So that being real time there, I can see that update, make a change. Again, that's that VAV box sitting inside of there. So obviously I need to work on this one. We know it's way above the 166 anyways. So if we went through, it was this second floor that made everything kind of jump overboard anyways. So let's say we go through and remove all of them. That should take us below that 80. And when we go back and look at our overload, hey, we're still flagged in red because we're at 73%. We're wanting to be notified at 70 instead of just 80% inside of there. So again, another way to use some formulas, attach them into a calculated value, almost parameter-like behavior, but again, giving you some of that real-time, kind of design notifications as you're going through here. Now, up to this point, we've just seen that occurring really in the schedules. Okay, we're going through, making changes there. We're seeing that flagging take place. Well, let's say that we want to be notified when we're working in a view. Okay, so if I want to go in and actually put, a graphical notification on a piece of equipment where there's an air handler, it's a pump that I've put too big of a flow on, or a diffuser, which we'll see here, this will give the designer or that Revit operator, that notification right there on the screen, as opposed to having to go into a schedule and see that information. So it allows that real-time behavior, and also it allows you to give some standardized information and default parameter values into your content as well. And this can be accomplished with either shared parameters or family parameters as well that get attached to the component. So again, coming back over to our project, within diffusers, again, I can do it. There's that VAV, that's that one there. I have the electrical connector, so there's our unassigned circuit. So on this diffuser, once I select on it, the default diffusers come in with an airflow of 500 CFM. So if you haven't touched them in the software, that's what they're going to come in as. Okay. If I take a look at the type parameters of it, there is a min and max flow inside of there. But again, this leaves these blank. These are for for us to populate based upon the model manufacturer that we're using. So I could go through, and sure, if I'm downloading a Titus grill or a diffuser from somewhere, it's probably going to have this all filled out anyways. But let's say I give this to the project, okay? Min and max. Well, as a designer, or let's say I'm grabbing someone from the electrical group to come over and help out, okay? And they insert the diffuser, they don't pay any attention to this. Well, what else reads that airflow? Well, the duct reads that airflow, the space reads it. So a lot of things can, kind of break down if we don't have the correct information downstream. What this lets me do is come in and I can put anything in here. I can put that this has 5 CFM. I can put that it has 5,000 CFM. Right or wrong, it's going to accept it with the standard out-of-the-box family here. Okay? So let's say we put that within the threshold. What was it, 175? We know that's between the min and the max, within here. Well, to take this, again, to the next level with another parameter, some basic formulas that will kind of give us this alert behavior, I'm going to open up this diffuser family. And this is going to work off of nesting a symbol into a diffusers. A lot of people have been doing some of these types of behaviors for years, and again, you can kind of evaluate what scenario you would apply it to. Okay, would it be more for the equipment itself? So as we're hooking up, diffusers downstream, by default, out of the box, that's not doing anything to my equipment that I'm connecting to. Okay, so if I want to be notified back at the VAV box that I've got, too high of an airflow, you can do this upstream from the diffusers as well. In this case, I've got the standard diffuser, and I'm going to nest in a symbol family. Okay, so I'm just going to create myself a new generic annotation. The standard notes there, and then just whatever graphical type of alert you want the end user to see on the screen. Is it a slash? Is it an X? Is it a, hey, what are you doing note on there that pops up? Anything that you want to put into here, it's up to you to decide, what that appearance really is going to end up looking like. So if I want to go through, put the null symbol, anything like that, it's going to go ahead and give me that functionality. So I'm just going to do a circle here. And I'm going to come back and just fill it in. Again, I want it to stand out. I don't want it to be just regular line, line weight and kind of blending in with it. Because again, if it's somebody that's not exactly familiar with how it's supposed to appear, if they see it with some black line work, no big deal. Well, if they see it with a big red shaded ring in there, a little bit more of an issue. Or like I said, I can complete it with a null symbol going across there, which you see quite often when you're running pipe duct. I've got this saved or set up. I go ahead and save it. I'm going to call it over. Again, be a little more descriptive on the naming of families, of course, but just to get it in there, I'm going to load it into that diffuser family. And it's ready to be placed. Now I could drop it in there, I could lock it down with alignment. It's not going to move anyways, but if you like to be safe and sorry, you could align and lock it if you so choose. Now, what I need to do is control the visibility of this symbol. So if I select on the symbol and go into my parameters of it, I've got the visibility control here, which I can associate it to another parameter. Now I can build the parameter up front, or I can kind of backdoor my way in there and jump right to a yes/no parameter creation. So if I go ahead and hit to add this parameter, again, I'm just going to stick with that generic naming. And it's going to be instance-based, right, because diffusers can have different airflows throughout. And anytime I do symbols, I always throw them under graphics. But again, no bearing on functionality, what you choose there. And I've got it set. So now, if I look at my actual parameters that are in this family, we've got this overload parameter. So it's just a checkbox. So toggling that on or off, if I had this in the project right now, would turn that symbol on or off. Well, I want to take it a step further. I don't want to have to go through that. It kind of defeats the purpose. We want to be notified when someone inputs invalid information. So we have a flow parameter. Okay, that exists. We know it's at 500. We've got the min and max flow parameters that are in there. So what we can do is put in an actual formula over here to get this yes/no parameter to toggle. In this case, it's going to validate that the flow parameter someone inputs it and it's greater than max flow, it's going to toggle it. Okay, so if we're looking at it right now, you can see the control's gone from here, and it now lives based upon these two values, flow and max flow. Okay, so right now max flow is less than flow, so it's turned off. But let's say we bump this max up to something huge here. You can see it automatically toggled that off, which would control the visibility of that symbol. And I could do some, more elaborate, if greater than for the max, less than for the minimum. We can embed that in there. Keep it simple here. You can see it's going to do one instance of it as well. Now, we've got our full-blown formula support here as long as we're returning numerical values and so forth within Revit. But what I always recommend doing is keeping yourself a cheat sheet of formulas. Okay, if you've got formulas that you reuse all the time, go ahead and create an Excel file. Okay, you can even group it that it's for fittings or air terminals or mechanical equipment, whatever you want. But copy-paste the formula into the Excel sheet, and in the cell right next to it, just give a brief description of what it does. This is pretty straightforward, but if you haven't done this parameter in 3 months, you might forget which one it is. You might be saying, oh, do I need a not? Do I need parentheses? Do I have that? Certain things I can go in there and start trying to do and get results I don't expect. Or let's say I completely error out and I get something like that. Okay, that's the worst, especially when you just built 10 characters or a big long expression inside of there. So if you keep yourself a little cheat sheet of commonly used formulas that you've done, you can just copy and paste them right here into the family editor, maybe change parameter name a little bit, and you'll be good to go with it. So now that this is implemented, once I accept it out, I'm going to load this diffuser back into the project. Once it comes in, you can see I've got my 175. Zoom out a little bit. I've got the flags here on these diffusers. Why? Well, because if I look at one of them, it's still at 500 CFM versus this one where I inputted the 175. So this falls within that min and max value. Now let's say we exceed that max. Okay, so now designer comes through, isn't paying attention, 250. We've exceeded that max. We get that immediate graphical notification. Hey, we've got an issue with what we're trying to do there. I need to resolve it. And again, back inside of here, they may dig around and they see the checkbox, but there's nothing they can do about it right there. That lives within the family's behavior itself. And again, it allows me to put some of those standard min-max values and also kind of keep people in check as far as what they're inputting in the actual design here, since we're dealing with more intelligent objects. So with that being said, how can you begin to implement some of these functionalities? Okay, within Imagine, we've got various scenarios for consulting. We've got customized Revit education that we can provide, not necessarily just following a book as far as working through these topics, but working with you to find out your exact need for the education, your end goals, and deliver more customized type of engagement surrounded around that. And it could be on site, or if it's something that can be handled online as well, in short groupings of hours available. Or you've got some particular content you would like us to take over and kind of make adjustments to. Of course, we've got the content creation capabilities as well. And then also at the same time, if you've implemented templates, the model, content, and would like to have that reviewed, basically an outside set of eyes, we can go through, analyze those various components, and provide back documented recommendations for advancing your process or your content kind of to the next level there. And with that being said, that brings us to the end of the presentation, and we will go ahead and open it up for Q&A.
1 second. Okay, I paused the recording. Awesome, thank you. Okay, I have one question here. And again, I will sign it to you, Scott, only because this is not my forte and I don't want to read something incorrectly.
Okay, let me get the QA pulled up.
So we are going to open this up now to questions. So feel free to type into the chat window, or if you've called in and you hit *6 on your phone, it'll unmute your line and you can ask a question that way. And I'm just looking for this email. I was not very prepared this morning when I was trying to type out where this would be located after. So I got it now. All right. So today's recording is going to be recorded, cleaned up, and it'll be available on our Productivity Now portal. The URL for that is portal, P-O-R-T-A-L, .imagineit, I-M-A-G-I-N-I-T.com. So I'll clean this up and have it ready for you on Monday. Now, in the meantime, where is all of our questions? I've got a couple down here. Just bear with me, guys. All right, there you go. I sent what I have. I think I assigned them back to you, Scott, so you can take a look at them.
Okay, so got a question. With conditional formatting and schedules, can shaded option now be used basically to black out a cell on a sheet? So if the value is 0, to print the box cell that color. I haven't currently seen that implemented yet. You know, we recently got the ability to show the actual shading on there. Now I've seen it inadvertently happen because of kind of background type behaviors, and they try to print with the shading and it masks out what's behind it, but not by us being able to choose to do so. And then, Lewis, have you used shared project parameters versus shared and project parameters? So, while I'm kind of filling this out, Lewis, if you can elaborate a little bit on that. But yeah, I've used shared project parameters because of the fact of we have to when it comes to schedules. So I build the shared parameters. I can attach them to the family, of course, but then I should go into my template and set up my standard schedules, and also use those shared parameters, but I've got to attach them through that, that project interface. Any other questions coming through? Okay. That looks like that was what you were looking for, Lewis. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll give it another minute, see if anything else comes in. And if not, again, this will be posted on our Productivity Now portal, hopefully by Monday. If anybody has any additional questions, I will put my email address in here. This is not Jenna. Jenna is off today, so my name is Lori Elliott. I'm in the Toronto office. I've left you my email address. It's elliott@rand.com if you have any further questions about today's presentation. All right, well, it looks like you've cleared up the Q&A box. All right, well, thank you very much, Scott, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye.